You know, I, as many of you, loved a lot of franchises as a kid. In particular, a lot of animated franchises. You know the stuff like How to Train Your Dragon, The Lion King, and one of my most beloved franchises as a kid, Lilo and Stitch. This movie was quite frankly everything you could have possibly wanted from an animated movie as a child. Catchy music, gorgeous visuals, and characters who are easy to love and form a bond with. This movie and its sequels plus TV show was so special to me because not only did you get fun, epic, goofy adventures, but you also got a surprising amount of heart. Heart so good that years later, even as an adult, I still find myself tearing up sometimes over the events going on. This movie was just so incredibly powerful and good at tugging at your emotions. So when it was announced that it was getting a live action remake, I was simply put, had no interest in it. What do I even say to this idea? While I'm not surprised Disney decided to remake it, I was certainly surprised that they did it so soon. After all, it's barely been 20 years since the original came out. It all seemed just a bit too soon. So you could imagine I was not very optimistic for this movie at all. But then the reviews came in, which were actually kinda positive, with a lot of people saying that it was one of the best live action Disney remakes. So that definitely got my attention. So yesterday I finally got my butt up to the theatre, and after watching this movie for myself, I can now confidently say that I feel incredibly depressed.
You make me sad.
Yeah, other critics, did we watch the same thing? Genuinely, the only reason I could think of this movie getting good reviews is the fact that it came out after Snow White, which was probably the worst thing Disney has made in a long time. But yeah, this movie in a vacuum is pretty bad for a number of reasons. But before I get into said reasons, let me explain why I think this movie is getting a lot of good praise so far. Because beyond the bar being so low for Disney remakes, I think the reason why this movie is getting a lot of good praise is because, simply put, nostalgia. And it's not in the sense of, oh, I remember that so it's good, but rather because of that nostalgia filling in the gaps this movie leaves. Yeah, there are legit moments in this movie where certain key elements from the original are absent here, like Pleakley and Jumba bonding, or the scene where Lilo is getting bullied by the other girls in a hula class, or worst of all, the Stitch is lost scene. Removing that scene was not only a sin, but a clear lack of understanding towards the concept of this movie. I will never forgive you for removing such a powerful and genuine scene from the original. That scene is practically what defined the movie. But the writers try to get away with this by throwing in moments where they were supposed to happen, but instead they just skip ahead to the next scene. Like with Stitch's Lost, he just goes for a walk in the woods, then goes back to the dog shelter. A scene that in the original lasted for a minute and 30 seconds roughly, but in the remake it is churned down to 15 seconds in total. And that's not even the only instance of them rushing key moments, like the beginning of the movie with the trial scene. In the original, it was roughly 2 minutes and 30 seconds for the trial, but in the remake, the trial scene and the Stitch breakout scene takes up less than 1 minute and 30 seconds. And the reason people won't notice it is because they already know what happens during these moments, since they've seen the original. So instead of trying to bring a new spin to it, they instead move it along faster and leave you to do all the heavy lifting here. Like seriously, if this movie came out before the original movie, and it was just this movie alone, I guarantee you most people who would see this would not understand what the hell is going on. Because here, they rely on nostalgia to fill in the gaps, while they move along like nothing happens. Like, what if someone who's never seen the original saw this movie? They won't understand what's going on, because this movie doesn't give them anything to latch onto. And that's the weird thing about this movie. Its pace is all over the place, with key moments like the intro, Nani finding a job, and the surfing scene are all rushed, with them being treated like an afterthought, but suddenly the movie will slow down in other moments, like with Nani talking to the social worker. It all feels super unnecessary, and this tonal shift constantly gave me whiplash throughout the entire movie. Because despite it being a remake, they do change a few key stuff, and that stuff they do change is simply not as good as the original. Like the villain of the movie. In the first movie, the antagonist was Gantu, someone who was enjoyable and easy to get interested in. He was just a guy doing his job and taking a little too much fun in it. But here, for whatever reason, they make Jumba the villain and erase Gantu entirely. And just why? Not only do they try to play it off as a crappy twist villain reveal, but the actor for Jumba is so boring. He doesn't sound smart, he doesn't sound evil, he just sounds like a dork. In the original movie, Jumba was a charming, witty bad guy who wasn't all that bad. He demonstrated his smarts, but also wasn't entirely reckless and was capable of doing stuff. He was someone who you enjoyed watching because of not only his personality, but his relationship with Pleakley, which made much more sense in the original movie and felt more organic, in comparison to the remake where it feels so forced and it's just a blatant lack of chemistry between these two characters. Also, they removed Pleakley's drag scenes. How could you do this to us, Disney, you absolute cowards? It genuinely is insane because this sudden change not only means we don't get the heart-wrenching scene of Stitch revealing himself to Lilo, but you also don't get the emotional and fun final battle where we see how much Stitch and Lilo have grown throughout the movie. And so it feels like this movie is missing an entire climax because of it. If I had to describe this movie in a single sentence, it would probably boil down to this: it is a watered down and uninspired copy of the original movie that manages to look really unpleasant at times and feel just so hollow and dull in comparison to how lively and interesting the original was. This movie is genuinely awful, and the only saving grace to this movie has to be Nani. Sydney Ogyudong does a really good job bringing a new side to Nani here that wasn't really explored much in the original. She is the best character in this movie purely because she's the only one trying. And Lilo's actress, while she tries her best, it's just not as good as you would like it to be. Like, genuinely, I cannot believe that this girl is a social outcast because they don't do anything to actually justify her being a social outcast. But this girl, I could believe is a social outcast because of her actions and how she speaks. It genuinely is just so depressing to me that we have progressed so much in cinema since the original movie came out. We have advanced technology beyond what we could have possibly imagined in 2002, and yet we are still unable to top the visuals, writing, and soul the original movie had. And that's 20 years old now. You can up the budget, you can up the effects, but you cannot artificially up the soul. And this movie proves why everything doesn't need a remake. But what do you guys think? Did you enjoy this movie, or are you left as sad as hell as I am with this complete nothing burger of a film? Let me know down in the comments below. I want to see what you guys have to say about this film because, man, I'm just done at this point. So many live action remakes are coming out that are just watered down versions of the original, and the How to Train Your Dragon remake is next month, so looks like we're not seeing the end of this trend anytime soon. And with that, peeps, it's been the Pink King here, and I will see you all next time.